Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Yes. Okay. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first presenter, uh, Ms. Darajat Wibawa. Is it online? On the line? Ada tak? Ada kan Malina?
Video, Doctor. Sorry.
Video.
Video, yes.
Okay. The topic or the title is Indonesian Mainstream Journalists in Digital Era. Okay, silakan.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining me. And let's introduce myself. My name is Darajat Wibawa. I'm from State Islamic University of Sunan Gunung Jati, Bandung. And the title of my research is Indonesia Mainstream Journalists in Digital Era. Okay, let's go start it. Okay, everyone. The title of my research is Indonesia Mainstream Journalists in Digital Era. And now I will presentation my paper. And my paper minimally can be divided 6 points. First, introduction, and then the second, objective, and then the third, methodology, and then the fourth, result, and next, implication and acknowledgement. Okay, I will start it from introduction. Yes. Okay. Okay. Introduction. In the digital era, the world of journalists increasingly open and more complex along with this technological development. Journalists today are not only able to express their ideas and touch through mainstream media such as print media, radio, and television, but also they can do it through online media using internet facilities. The emergence of online media came later after the mainstream media. However, its existence have become the main competitor of mainstream media in a race to become the leading media in providing information to the public. Online media develop and grow so fast that make it difficult to identify the real number of them in Indonesia. Mainstream media seem to be running nowhere. Technically, online media journalists have to update their news at all times so that they seem to have no spare time to do activities outside of their work. Journalists in mainstream media, meanwhile, work in news production by following the pattern of daily or weekly and newspaper or magazine, or following certain schedule on television or radio. In carrying their work, mainstream media, their form is not as updated as online media. Okay, that is introduce my paper. Okay, next, objective. The objective of this research is first, the pattern interaction of mainstream media journalists in the digital era. The second, the work process of mainstream media journalists in the digital era. And then the third, the effect of mainstream media journalists news in the digital era. The subject of this research is Indonesian mainstream media journalists. The study is not intended to find correlation and finding answer to prove a hypothesis. Thus, the most suitable method in the study is the descriptive research method of a qualitative approach. Okay, the descriptive method is used to collect, describe, and identify information as well as make comparison or evaluation on symptom, event, or phenomena in society. The descriptive method is not aimed to test a theory, but to flexibly observe the object to explore and discover new insights that are found in the research process. The data collection technique in this study use interview and observation. Okay, in interview is a conversation activity with a specific purpose, of course. The conversation is carried out between the interview who asks several questions with the interview who answer the question. Okay, observation can be considered as an attempt to observe an particular object using the eyes. The activity began by paying attention to a particular object using all these senses. Observation is also a process of recording and observing logically, systematically, rationally, and objectively about various phenomena, either in artificial or actual situation to achieve a specific goal. Okay, that is about methodology my research. Based on interview and observation with more than 45 Indonesian mainstream media journalists before COVID-19 in Indonesia, the result of this research can be three categories. First is the pattern of interaction of the mainstream media journalists with news sources, and the second, the work process of the mainstream media journalists, and third, the effect of mainstream media journalists news on the audience. And according to the informant, the pattern of relationship built by mainstream media journalists with news sources is not disturbed by the presence of online media journalists. It is because all journalists are having their weaknesses and strengths in performing their duties and work. Relationship pattern between mainstream media journalists Indonesian with news sources are developed based on the principle of professionalism, idealism, and neutrality. Okay, the work process of the mainstream media journalists consists of finding, collecting, processing, and publishing activities. The accepted effect by mainstream media journalists in the form of rise, complaint, insult, and intimidation from the news sources or public. Okay, that is about the result my research. Okay, next now about implication. This research has an implication on the actualization of journalist activity when carrying out their profession so that journalists are aware of their potential and weakness. In addition, this research can also be the basis for media managers to immediately make policies that can develop mainstream media in the digital era. Acknowledgement. The researcher would like to thank all those who have helped so that this paper can be completed. The researcher also expressed appreciation to colleagues and leader at the Communication and Dakwah Faculty, State Islamic University of Sunan Gunung Jati, Bandung. Okay, everyone, that is my presentation, and thank you, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you for to Bapak Darajat Wibawa, okay, from Universitas Universitas Islam Negeri Sunan Gunung Jati, Bandung. Okay, actually the main topic or the main the basic discipline is about journalists in the new era, especially in the pandemic and digital phenomena or digital sphere or digital landscape. Okay, at the moment, yeah, they have change of dynamic in terms of how the journalists from the traditional media into the new media. Okay, there's a transformation between that lah. Okay, anyway, I will open to the floor if you have any questions regarding to this. Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, this is digital. Okay, they're recording. Sorry, I thought that is on the line because the previous what do you call it? The previous presentation. Okay, all the presenters has been attend, even though they are present by using the video. Okay, but unfortunately this time around the Bapak Darajat they wouldn't be able to come. So I would go to another presenters. Okay, our second presenters is Dr. Erwin Kartinawati and Andrik Purwasito from Universitas Sahid Surakarta, Universitas 11 Maret. How are you, Prof?
Okay, hello. My professor, sorry, isn't here, so I representative of my professor, Professor Andrik Purwasito.
Yes, okay. So the topic is changes in journalist work patterns and media challenge in the new form, in the new norms, a case in Surakarta City, Indonesia. So silakan ya.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Let me introduce myself. I'm Erwin Kartinawati from Universitas Sahid Surakarta. I'm representative my college, Professor Andrik Purwasito from Universitas 11 Maret Surakarta. Our research is about the change in journalist work patterns and media challenges in Surakarta in the new normal era. Surakarta is the city in Central Java. Surakarta is the city of Indonesian President Joko Widodo came from. Okay, but the problem background of our research is the global COVID-19 pandemic has brought extraordinary changes to all sectors of life in society, including the media industry. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the work order and work patterns that have prevailed in the media industry. This research highlights the changing work patterns and challenges faced by journalists in Surakarta City, Indonesia in the new norm. This research covers the performance of journalists in the field and also changes in the newsroom. Sorry. The routine of media organization is no longer the same as before the pandemic. Routine activities that are usually done in normal era are mediated. One way to stop the spread of the virus is work from home policy, but as we know, not every profession can be done from home, like health workers and journalists, for example. For media workers, especially journalists, almost impossible to do their jobs from home. They have to keep working as usual, unable to stay at home, going out to get the news to present to the public. Reporting must be done outside the home in order to get accurate, actual, important, interesting facts and other things to be presented to the public. Although they still have to do coverage, the work pattern of journalists or reporters has changed. What changes have occurred is the question of our research, and then what challenges are faced by the media industry at this era become the focus of research. And then why the research is important, because we think that our research is still a new phenomena. The references in the field of communication, especially regard to media work, are still dominated by old practices about media routine under normal conditions. This research also provides new things in the field of communication science, especially regard to news production and mass media routine, especially due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The current pattern, it seems, will also affect the reporting pattern of journalists when the pandemic is declared over. About the method, we use interview technique and also observation. Interview and observation were carried out on journalists who were assigned to cover event in Surakarta City, Indonesia. We did it to 9 journalists. They are from MNC Media, and then Solo Post, Joglo Semar, Tribunnews.com, Metro TV, Jos ID, and still there are 3 other media workers, but they asked us not to reveal their identities. And about the result, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought changes to all sectors, like I said before, including the media industry. In the field of reporting, when the changes that occur can be seen from the patterns always journalists carry out their reporting duties. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed many old habits, values, rules, which previously could have been considered as abstinences and even bans, into something that is actually recommended. The result about the change in work pattern, change in how to get the news, and then change in news package, and then information source orientation, and the last change, editorial rule change. And about the media challenges in the pandemic era are about technology and labor reduction, and then safety, and then domination of news source, and diversity of content. About the changes and how to get news in the era before the pandemic, journalists were required to go directly to the field where an event occurred. Extracting information must be obtained from first-hand source. Therefore, journalists are required to approach the object in order to ensure the completeness of data and the accuracy of the news. From there, various information will be extracted from various angles based on the distribution of fact obtained in the field. That's why news exclusivity is so important, not only to give something different to the public, but also a form of media prestige, and is also important for the sustainability of the media economy. But the COVID-19 pandemic has changed those patterns and views. The threat of the virus inevitably makes journalists have to keep their distance from news object, including from source. In red zones or risk area, for example, journalists are prohibited from entering or approaching the object. That is to protect the safety of journalists and also the safety of others, given the spread of the virus, not all of which can be clearly detected. So how about the way? So journalists no longer use first-tier source. The journalists are allowed to use second-tier source as long as the truth of the content of news can be accounted for, or the source users have the competence or credibility of what is said to the public. About the change in news package, the COVID-19 pandemic has forced people to spend more time at home. Media consumption is increasing, but the media are having problems on getting news because there are not many activities that can be heard. The informants are also afraid to be interviewed. Journalists must also protect their health. As a result, media or content production is reduced. To fill the airtime, the media changed the news package from the previous one in the form of narration or voiceover to a live report or mini talk show. The media also recycle some old news, especially soft news types, for rebroadcasting in other news package. And then about the changes to a number of news journalists who quite difficult to get news material. The pandemic also made advertising revenue drop drastically. That is why the media also chooses a frugal pattern by not deploying many reporters to the field for things that are not very urgent. Assignments carry out based on the predetermined projection. Some of the media add new rubrics, for example, is tribunews.com that add health rubric. This rubric didn't exist before the pandemic to fill the column. About the change in news orientation source, journalists mostly use news from the government and then hospital, police, and so on. More information is dominated by government sources or power owners, while information obtained from grassroots is not as many as. That is because there are many agendas carried out by citizens besides changing the orientation of reporting from exclusivity to projection and the obligation to protect themselves from the virus. About the editorial rule change, the reporters right now must not go to the office. Newsroom applies picket system. Then the newsroom meeting is mediated by virtual meeting. The newspaper right now is printed faster than before. Right now printed is about 10 p.m. and before at midnight. And then the workers must wear gloves, double masks, hand sanitizer, vaccine, etc. But the challenge that faced by the media in new norm is are technology and labor rejection, and then the safety and domination of news source and diversity of content. About technology and labor reduction, the pandemic requires workers to be more creative as well as to maximize technology. Therefore, journalists now also double as cameraman and then doing live report by themselves. Photographer will also did as videographer, then reporter as a photographer and also videographer. Multitasking, something like that. So it will affect the loss of several professions. But the safety, many workers infected virus, then some of them pass away. So the media must have ways to protect their workers. About the domination of news source and diversity of content, the proportion of resource person become unbalanced, more dominated by the government. As a result, more news sources only from one side. People don't get news from many sides or aspects. That because access to news is also not like the previous condition. And the last, this condition open up opportunities for citizens to fulfill their information need, especially regard to diversity of content with independent sources such as citizen journalism. The government and journalist organization can be participate by opening media literacy programs or training that can support citizen competence as citizen journalists. I think it's all. Thank you very much for the time.
Okay, thank you to sorry,
Miss Erwin.
Miss Erwin, yeah, I forgot your
Yeah. Kartinawati.
Ibu
Okay.
kan Purwasito. Oh, Ibu Erwin.
Yeah.
Erwin, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I lost your name. Okay. Anyway, thanks for your presentation. Okay. Okay, I open to the floor if you have any questions regarding to this. Universitas 11 Maret ya. Okay.
In the last session is okay. Maybe next speaker.
Is okay as well.
To effective time maybe.
Okay. Because sometimes I would prefer to straightforward because sometimes lupa, you know. Okay. Anyway, okay lah. I go to another panel. Okay, to another presenters. Dr. Nurhanis Matno from Taylor's University. Okay, Dr. Anis, how are you?
Yes, saya. How are you? Assalamualaikum. Good evening.
Okay, so the topic or title is the challenge.
Waalaikumsalam.
Journalists, the reporting news and dealing with the COVID-19 misinformation. So without further ado, I will silakan.
All right, thank you very much. Makasih banyak. All right, I'm gonna share my screen right here. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, Doctor.
All right, thank you. Give me a second.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me just play that. All right. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum and very good evening to all my colleagues right here and the guests and participants of Mention 2021. I am Nurhanis Muhammad Noor. I am the managing editor from Search Journal. I am a senior lecturer as well at the School of Media and Communication, and I hail from Faculty of Social Sciences and Leisure Management from Taylor's University. So without further ado, my topic for today would be challenges of Malaysian journalists reporting news and dealing with COVID-19 misinformation. So to start with, first and foremost, when we talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, it started off in 2020, and with that, when we talk about frontliners, we always think about the medical workers, which is really, really true. We have to applaud for their marvelous work in combating the COVID-19 and taking care of all the COVID-19 patients. But sometimes in life, we take things, we take things for granted, where we mislook and overlook that in getting information on COVID-19 itself is because of the reputable journalists around the world who reports on COVID-19. So when we talk about and with that, when we talk about COVID-19, especially in Malaysia, we transition from pandemic to endemic and to cases of 4885 cases right now. I think most of us right now, especially in Malaysia, because everything is opening, we don't check the number of cases right now because everybody is so happy you can go out and things like that. But we always have to be careful, where we don't want things to happen to us and so forth. So with that, to get this information on COVID-19 is news, and with that news is being reported by journalists. So journalists exist as a part of an ecology in which their work influences and is influenced by the environment that surrounds it. So when we talk about news and information itself, to get information, every course of our action from day to day, how would we know not to go out, to go to work, to go to campus, not to, dine in or dine out? It's because of the news and information that we have and that we get from all this news reporting. So what I'm going to explain right here, to indulge you in my research, would be this study will take an approach in looking at how Malaysian journalists adapting their profession during the COVID-19 pandemic and how they deal with the misinformation that the public has on COVID-19. So I'm just gonna go to the next one. All right, so with that, when we talk about journalists are a tool of information. Sometimes we forget that they are also frontliners, that they also take a great deal of danger in getting out and giving out information to the public, and not and ignoring all this SOPs, because as a journalist you have to, in Malay we call jolo, you have to go, if you want to interview a person, you have to put your phones right here, and then in order to get an interview to be recorded. And with that, social distancing in a journalist job is a little bit hard, because you have so many journalists around, and to get information you have to fight for it as a journalist. So with that, when we talk about journalists, it conceive of operate their role given what they perceive their audiences need, and with that, journalists' purpose is to monitor, to observe and the environment for relevant information about events, conditions, trends and threats. So when when we talk about journalist responsibility, it's so big. I am a journalist myself. I was a freelance journalist for such a long time. So, to give out information to the public, you owe it to the public to know something. Yeah. And with that, due to the pandemic, when it started, everybody was so scared. Everybody did not know what COVID-19 is all about. That you say SARS-CoV, and then you have COVID-19, and then some people will talk in another technical terms. So these journalists act as a tool of explanation to the public to understand that the world is in danger. We are experiencing a pandemic, and with that, we have to go step by step in taking care ourselves and the community. So journalism itself is such a great noble profession in that sense. So the theory used in this particular study is disaster communication ecology, whereby a disaster communication ecology refers to the resources and information individual use before, during, and after a disaster. So while journalists, like any other individuals, must adapt to crisis and disaster. So when we talk about the COVID-19, not only it hits everybody, from farmers to social workers, to doctors, to nurses, teachers, and even waitresses, actresses. So and with that, we are in a communication ecology itself, where we share the information about COVID-19 between one another. So with that, how would this theory fit into the study itself, whereby journalists seek to establish practices focused on 4 key principles, which are research, commitment to freedom of speech, and a dedication to the pursuit of truth and accuracy in reporting, and ethics. So these 4 key principles are I would say, the essence of how journalists should work during the COVID-19, because you are in a position to be so much responsibility on your shoulders to give out information to the public during a disaster. Yeah. And with that, I'll go straight to my methodology right here, whereby I took a qualitative approach, one-to-one interview, whereby I conduct 6 interviews from various local journalists from different news desks, especially in Malaysia, and random purposive sampling, so that that this particular study have different viewpoints of journalists from different desks. And the data collection is from June to July 2021, and this study has gained the consent of all journalists. So I had the opportunity to interview journalists from Court News Desk, News Straits Time, Current News Affairs Desk, which cover on COVID-19 daily cases, Berita Harian, Head of Digital Media Bernama, who is in charge of releasing out information on COVID-19, the stringer for Current News Desk, Utusan Malaysia, producer of Astro Awani, and another journalist will be a journalist of Astro Awani as well. So and to sum up the findings and analysis of the challenges of Malaysian journalists in news reporting during COVID-19. Among it would be to make the public understand what is COVID-19. So I would say, sometimes we come to a stage right now, because we are at the endemic level. I still remember we are at the case of 22,000, where everybody's so scared to go anywhere. So and at the beginning, at the beginning stage of the COVID-19, journalists were organizing visuals and figures, and they actually had a challenge to to get information about COVID-19 back then, according to all Malaysian journalists that I interview, because back then information was scarce on COVID-19. China was withholding that information. So they tried to get as much as possible in terms of creating visuals, figures, and explanation of what COVID-19 is. And during the beginning of the pandemic, less information is known about COVID-19 is. I think in 2020, we start off with like 25 cases, then 23 cases, and it rises. And the next one, what this all the 6 journalists talk about, and what I found out by talking to them would be work from home, working on site, and follow-ups as well, because of the movement restriction in Malaysia itself. Journalists have to do work online, and as a journalist, to do work online, it's such an alien thing, because to get stories, you have to meet people, you have to be on field, you have to see the environment, and to do it online, it's so challenging for these 6 journalists. And with that, what they mentioned is, due to the restriction, they have to have a solid base of networks. So when we talk about networks, would be contacts, any contacts pertaining to any kinds of sources is very important for them, to get a story. And with that, they have to write up stories from home. And for journalists who are in the CNA desk, CNA would be current news affairs desk, especially in Malaysia, only 2 are allowed from every organization to cover on COVID-19 issue, whereby they have to have a social distancing, especially during the KKM. KKM will be Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia, the Ministry of Health press conference every day, where only 2 journalists are assigned to a particular press conference. And with that, other than that, they have to do Zoom press conferences, and then liaise with the Minister of Health to get information on COVID-19. So there was also an instance whereby, because internet connectivity in terms of working from home and online is important, internet connection is very important. So at some instances, when they share in the study, sometimes during the press conference, the minister will froze in Zoom, and then the minister could not hear, and then and with that, internet connectivity is crucial for for all journalists, and to actually get news stories and create news stories, on a day-to-day basis. So, and another point would be social distancing is quite hard, whereby as I mentioned before, to get a group of journalists, to interview a person, sometimes for you to have a person on record and the voice is clear, you have to be really close to that person. So to get source on record, especially in terms of the SOP, standard of procedure, is really hard for journalists, to get their sources clear and their recording clear for them to create news stories. And another challenge would be huge contact list of sources as well. What they share in the particular study would be, sometimes sources do not want to cooperate in terms of working online, whereby people avoid journalists, and with that, sometimes sources could tend on to go on, and journalists would find it very challenging to have their information, to take their information and to make it as a news value. And another point of challenges in news reporting would be downsizing media outlets as well. What they share with me, most not mainly, majority of media outlets in Malaysia have to downsize, and many journalists are being laid off due to the pandemic as well. And with that, due to that, the current journalists would be overloaded and swarmed with covering events and assignments all over Malaysia as well. And continuing on, but due to the pandemic, this is such a very interesting thing. When I did this study, is that all these journalists from different desks would say, it actually has taught them to be much more creative, because back then, one way of doing things, and with that, they think, they have to be adaptable. As a journalist, you have to know, not only writing news, you have to know how to shoot a video, you need to know how to edit, you need to know how to do Facebook Live, posting something on Instagram, and then on TikTok as well, because audiences around the world right now is very segmented in that way. And with that, it tests them to be more versatile in their reporting skills. They take up all kind of skills to make sure that their readers and their audiences are there watching them. And in talking to these six credible journalists, what I found out in the study would be fear, whereby if younger generations or students of journalism, upon finishing their degree and entering into journalism, they wouldn't feel the essence of being a journalist, whereby you go and drive with a passion in getting out news and talk to people and things like that, because of the COVID-19. So they fear that younger journalists would say, as a journalist, you just work online. So that would be the fear that they share in this particular study. And to sum up on a little bit on their views on misinformation on COVID-19, how is it relatable? Because they give out information, and it's only nice to talk to ask them about their views on misinformation as well. And with that, all the six journalists would say, government should come up with creative ways to combat misinformation as well. And freedom, because of the freedom of information and expression is there due to the technology and internet, we could not control, we could not control misinformation. So what the six journalists at the end of the day, as a group, they would want people around the community to be more media literate, because when we have technology and technology and digitalization around us, we tend to become a little bit much more complacent in checking out information. Whatever we see, from whatever we see at the very first hand, we tend to believe that, because we don't want to check and check. So they hope, as a group, they hope that if one particular individual could have uh, to be media literate, have media literacy, and with that, if they could spread that awareness amongst them, that would spark a change in the community as well. And as a conclusion, so disaster communication ecology dissects ways to journalists do their work and think about their work. And because in the pandemic, it's important to always reflect back things that we come out from our comfort zone, and we tend to do outside from our comfort zone. So, and with that, journalism is always flexible to change or adapting as I believe in this particular study, and in regards to misinformation on COVID-19, it goes back to media literacy and Stuart Hall reading as well, because different people have different interpretation on COVID-19, and with that, it's going to be a tough time to actually combat misinformation, but it starts by one person. If you could actually be, if an individual in our community could, fact check and check back and critically think, the information that we get, and with that we will spread, a positive, a positive course of action around our community in terms of reading information and practicing journalism. Yes, with that, thank you very much, and assalamualaikum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nurhanis,
Yes.
for your in-depth elaboration regarding to the new norms. I mean, the way journalists adapt and working in the new norms, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So, I would like to open to the floor if you have any questions regarding to our both presenters. Okay, I think the topic is quite interesting, related to the journalists and then the way we face at the moment. Okay, the current scenario, which is totally different. In fact, myself, I'm working as a journalist for 7 years in Utusan Malaysia. What happened nowadays are totally different. Okay, because of the 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 emerging of the new situation or phenomena. Okay, if you have any questions, I open to the floor.
Hi, Dr. Nazmi.
Okay, Dr. Sharon Block. Sharon, okay, our students. Okay.
No, it's Dr. Sharon Wilson from Utah.
Oh, Dr. Sharon. I sorry. I thought Sharon. Okay, sorry. I thought I was student.
No worries.
Yeah. Silakan. Yeah.
It's okay, Dr. Nazmi. You just made me feel younger.
Okay.
Okay, this is for Dr. Hanis. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think you beautifully elaborated on what was going on with the journalists. I think very eloquently put. Not much of a question, more of a comment. I think something for us all to think about and ponder is the fact that how, traditionally, and for someone who's been a journalist before also, traditionally, I remember my editors used to tell me, if you're sitting in the newsroom, you're not doing a job. You're supposed to go out and cover news and meet the people. And I think that is the biggest challenge for journalists today, not being able to go out and meet the people. And the fact that, if you're covering courts or you're covering crime, for example, or even politics for that matter, there was a shift in the way it was reported. I mean, looking at crimes, and because my research area is immediate crime, looking at crimes, there wasn't much of reporting in crimes either. Criminals also cannot go out lah, kan, to commit crime. So that was a big shift in the way even crime reporters had to do their news, cover the news, and so on. So brilliantly put, Dr. Hanis. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharon. If I would just like to add, because of the COVID-19, there's less crimes, because people are sitting at home, don't you think so?
Absolutely.
But not saying that there's less crimes, but there is in terms of mental abuse and sexual abuse. But again, yes, I do agree. If we were to put in an office, in the newsroom, if we were to sit in the office, it means that you're not a good journalist. Yeah, you're being freeze. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Only one question. Going back to your methodology, you mentioned that you interviewed six people from the newsroom.
Sure.
I'm wondering, I noticed there were 3 journalists, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 journalists, and then you also had 2 or 3 of them who were in a decision-making capacity, head of digital news, I believe.
Yes, they are also journalists as well.
Okay, because I was wondering if they were in a decision-making kind of a level, would that affect the way information is gathered and reported? So that was basically the question.
Basically, I interviewed the producer of Esra Awani, also a host in Esra Awani. So what he mentioned is that it was not easy to do everything on your own. Yeah, as a producer, during the first half of the 2020, he has to do everything on his own in terms of online, but still being in the office alone and editing and things like that. And he could not get any help, from other journalists because because of the restrictions and so forth. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sharon.
Hello.
Others, if you have any
I
questions?
have a question for Dr. Hanis.
Yes.
So, based on your opinion, as a journalist, how do you write to influence people? For example, you're trying to write about Uganda, for example, okay, about child marriage, and it's a very salient issue to talk about. And when you want to write an article, you want to write an article that impacts others to help with your cause. So through your writings, how do you make people feel impacted and want to support for the cause? Like what type of characteristics do you add in writings? That's my question.
All right, thank you very much, Jay Sheena, for a wonderful question. I would say in Malaysia, you have hard news writing, whereby you can't give out more. You can't give out your opinion in terms of whatever you see, whatever you observe, you have to report. But in terms, if you write for more of a futuristic style of news, you are able to do that provided that your editors are agreeable with you as well. I think in terms of in the Malaysian context, we have to do what our editors are agreeable with. But if to make an influence and impact in our writing, to talk about sensitive issues, I would say you are able to do that. You don't have to be a registered journalist to do that. You have blogs, you have your social media platforms where you could actually have more people to talk to reach out. But as a journalist, if you work in a media organization, you are restricted to your media organization's objectives. Sometimes you would want to go an extra mile to do something out from your comfort zone and to do something extra. But if your organization doesn't allow you to do that, that's another thing as well. Yes. So it depends on where you work, Jeshina. Yes.
I have a suggestion.
Yes.
I'm Dr. Roslina from Taylor's University. A bit biased, but Hannes is an old friend. So is Dr. Sharon Wilson. Hello, Sharon. Long time no see. Thank you, Dr. Nazmi, for the opportunity. My suggestion is this, Hannes. Since you've already done the research with fellow journalists, maybe it would be a good idea to take it a step further and interview people in power, like what Dr. Sharon mentioned, right? The decision makers, and see what came out of that. Because ever since the last general elections, we see a decline in journalism. We're all ex-journalists, so it's a bit sad looking from the outside, looking in, how journalism seems to have lost its plot ever since that general election. So it's a bit sad. So if you could take it a step further and see how the decisions are made in the newsroom, maybe that would be an interesting take to add on to your research.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Rosina. I would take that into note. Definitely. Thank you very much.
So I also have a question, and this question is for Dr. Anis. There was a really good research, and you did really well presenting it. But I have this one question, and this might not be too relevant to your research, but I was wondering, you said earlier about how they downsizing the journalists. So wondering like what happened to them now? Like did they get their job back or what?
Okay, thank you very much, Naufal. Most of my friends, I graduated from UITM. I'm from UITM Masscom, so my degree was in journalism. So most of my friends right now are journalists. What happened is that after the media outlets downsized, and most of my friends lost their jobs. Some are selling Tupperware, some are doing their online businesses, some are baking. So sometimes to go back into the field, it takes a lot of, I would say, commitment back, because they are really accustomed with another lifestyle. Because as a journalist, it's very outgoing and thriving and things like that. So and with that, they have accustomed to another different lifestyle. So I wouldn't say, being a journalist right now has lost its significance. No, because we need information, every single time. But it takes a lot of courage to go back into news reporting for most of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, okay, Dr. Anis.
Thank you.
Actually, I agree with your the opinion regarding to this. I'm not saying that the media is a dying business at all. Yeah, but what happened at the moment is that the transformation conditions, yeah, in between the traditional media towards the new media, some sort of like that. Yeah, because based on the certain specific data in terms of the advertising revenue, okay, in terms of the circulation, newspaper circulation, blah blah blah, you can see that the traditional media is a de-escalation mode. Okay, but what happened in the new media side, journal the bulan, siakap keli lah, so on and so forth. There are thousands of online news portal nowadays. Yeah, you can see the skyrocketed, in terms of the audience, yeah, in terms of the advertising revenue, so on and so forth. In fact, to be honest, I what do you call it? Ask my students not go to Extra Awani ke RTM. I ask them to go to like in Bangi there are a thousand, berbanyak lah, the media station, online media station, especially the internet, internet based, okay, in Cyberjaya as well. So they go into this station and become as a journalist and end up with to be a executive journalist or so on and so forth. Okay, so they will see the new dynamic in the journalism world, okay, at the moment. So that's my observation as of now. Yeah, my friend as well, semua dah jual kuih on those things. The loss of job, what happened after 2018, sorry, the utusan collapsed, and then the some of the media prima and the current craft, so on. So they try to transform themselves. Yeah. Okay, any questions? Tak ada? Okay, so I think we can wrap up. Thanks for our both presenters. Okay, you already done a good job. Okay, good input. Okay, good finding as well. So I think I will. Where's our MC?
Here, doctor.
Okay. Amalina, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. Sharul Nazmi. Okay, now I need cooperation from all crowd here. Open camera.
Amalina, I have question. Can I get the all the slides? Where can I get all the slides?
Oh, slide.
Yeah, the slide that all the slide that they all presented. Can I?
Okay. Technical person in charge, Abdullah.
Yes.
Do you have all PowerPoint or slide from presenter?
So far we got by Dr. Narajat Wibawa only.
I think okay, what we can do is Okay, Naufal.
Naufal,
Okay, nanti Amalina, can you get numbers from Naufal and
Yes.
then yes, we can deal
Okay.
directly lah.
Okay, Ahmad Naufal, please
Okay.
write down your number in chat box.
Okay.
Okay, now please open camera. Okay. Abdullah, okay.
Right, so ladies and gentlemen, please open the camera. So we count 3, 2, 1. Another shot. And 3, 2, 1. Alright, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, we end our parallel session this afternoon. Hope to see you again in the next session, next mention conference, inshallah. Okay, all presenters can leave breakout room and join other breakout room, or let's turn to main session. Thank you to all.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Amalina. Thank you, Dr. Nazmi.
Thank you, Doctor.